My guest today is Owen Benjamin, a fantastic comedian and actor. You can find his YouTube, Owen Benjamin Comedy, or his website, hugepianist.com. He was an up-and-comer in Hollywood until he decided to stand up for the rights of children to not be chemically castrated by their parents. And that meant he had to go. He had to get out and try to do it himself. Good thing he has succeeded wildly, has a massive following, and makes daily YouTube videos that are highly entertaining, in which he basically just talks sort of free form, responds to questions, and discusses sort of the research that he's doing on a day-to-day basis. Highly entertaining, great stuff, and tours. Occasionally you can get his specials at hugepianist.com. That's also where you can buy tickets to his shows when he travels around the United States, giving those great shows. I've been to one. It was highly entertaining, and I highly recommend it. Owen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. That was a very humbling intro. That was very sweet of you, brother.
Well, you know, last week, I brought up the fact that you are now very adamant about the moon landing being a hoax, and a lot of people, I got a lot of response. I got a lot of angry response about this, and people thought I was coming at you. I mean, people they thought I was coming at you. They thought I was.
Oh no! See, when I
crazy.
when I heard that you said that we went to the moon, I was so pumped because you're a friend of mine and you're smart and you're cool and you're like me, like this ancient tribe of humans that can debate a topic without attaching all their emotions and freaking out about it. So I was excited to talk to you about it because I love pushback on ideas, and from what I've seen so far with the moon situation is the only comparable thing I've experienced is when I said abortion was immoral when I was still living in Hollywood, and that whole like, well, that means you're evil response was so reactionary that the only other time is with this moon thing, like saying that NASA faked the moon landing makes people absolutely lose their minds. So when I heard it was you, I was like, oh, great. Because I know you, so I know that you're not the type of person to be like, well, I guess Owen's insane now, you know?
Yeah, screw that guy. I'm not going to listen to him anymore. No, yeah, what? Yeah, no way. It's just super interesting.
It's so interesting. It's the most interesting thing right now for me, and it was because of the Steph Curry thing. Because as a free speech guy, it's like to watch a basketball player not be allowed to have an opinion set off so many red flags for me. And usually you get flack when you're over a target. So I'm like, why can these people have certain opinions? Like, why can they think Donald Trump is the embodiment of Adolf Hitler, but they're not allowed to speculate about the Apollo missions from 1969? I knew something was going on. And so I started diving into it. And I think it's laughable that anyone thinks that mission. And listen, I'm not saying that there hasn't been secret missions or something else is going on, because it's really difficult to prove a negative. But all I'm saying is what they showed America and what they told us was an absolute obvious lie. And so I'd love to hear why you think that it was true.
Well, I haven't heard convincing arguments otherwise, although, you know, I'm open-minded, and like if Buzz Aldrin or somebody, you know, on their deathbed was like, it's all fake, it was a lie, I'm not going to be like, screw that, he's crazy, we went. Like, you know, It's possible we didn't go. And you watch InfoWars, you learn about the level of lying that goes on. This is not, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But the reason I wanted to bring it up, you know, and sort of use you as kind of an illustration for it is because, you know, none of us are born red-pilled, right? We're not born knowing this stuff. Usually you just live your life, you believe everything that everybody tells you, and you don't realize that there's so many secrets and hidden stuff. And so at some point, everybody probably listening now and everybody who's into conspiracies and all this stuff, at some point has a moment where like the rug is ripped out from under them and they start to go through a process of discovery and research, and it can be kind of disorienting. And what I enjoy about your work is that you do this in real time. You do like these long hour-long streams every day where we get to see, okay, that's what Owen discovered today. That's what he's researching today. And so it's so fascinating watching someone sort of be red-pilled like that in real time and as you're working it out. And then I sort of stopped watching you, but not for very long, just for like a week or two. And then I went back on, and suddenly you're just all about the moon landing hoax. And I was like, whoa, what happened here? Because
Yeah,
one of
and,
the things
and that's just like, and that's an interest, you know. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like people sometimes don't understand that, and it's like that's what makes you interested in something, and that's what potentially makes you an expert down the line. And what you're talking about in real time in this world of the branded human, a lot of people don't get to see the process of figuring something out and the process of becoming interested in something. And you know, like I'm a piano player, and imagine people being like, dude, get off the piano thing. It's like, that's what this is. And my motto, I might be wrong, but not lying, is kind of my thing. I let people watch the process of trying to figure something out. And like, for me, it's been insane, not insane. It's been eye-opening watching people not capable of understanding the level of deception that the government is capable of. It's almost like Santa Claus. It's like Santa Claus for adults. And with, especially with the moon landing, like when people are like, oh, you're anti-American because you're questioning it. I'm like, dude, there's nothing more American than questioning the government. And by the way, like Werner von Braun was an SS major. Like he was Hitler's guy. And then I'm like, you're the one. Well, most people don't even know about Operation Paperclip and bringing over like high-ranking Nazis for the moon landing and stuff. So even off the bat, before you talk about, you know, their live streaming ability from the moon or the rocks or the minerals in the rocks, or how it's the only time in human history that there's been an exploration where no one else followed for 50 years. Like in the history of humans, it's the only time in history where technology is apparently stopped and went in reverse. You know, the fact NASA deleted. Go ahead.
Let me just say, hold on. Well, I want to hear all this, and we'll get into all of the intricacies in the beginning. But I wanted to say kind of that you know, a lot of people, when you get the rug pulled out from under you, and you do realize the level of deception that's out there, and the things you've been lied about. Like, I'm not worried about you because you are intelligent and you don't seem to take things too seriously, and you can, like, I'm not like, oh God, Owen Benjamin's off the deep end, you know, he's not coming back. But not everybody's like that. And a lot of people do sort of, it's like you realize that so much is lies, and then you just go way too far and you go, oh my God, everything's a lie. Nothing is real.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think it's interesting that, in my opinion, with, you know, I think that the moon landing actually happened, and we'll get into that. And so, you know, it's kind of like, it's like, oh, is he going too far? Is he going too far down the rabbit hole now? And it's just sort of an interesting thing, because I've seen it with my friends and family and all these different people that, like, there's a certain point that you got to go, okay, step back and not go too far down the rabbit hole. I mean, that's fair, right?
Yeah, of course that's fair. But like, as a tree guy, I'll give you a good analogy. It's like when you're going up a tree, you have to keep a good amount of your mass on the trunk if you're going out on a limb, right? So it's very similar with a lot of this stuff. Like, I don't rest any of my the image of who I am and how I think and how I feel in what the government is doing. It's in my family, faith, health, comedy, piano. Like, it can take you down a road of nihilism if you get your self-worth from the government and from the narrative, as they say. But since I get nothing from that, not only doesn't it spiral me, it frees me, because the less cognitive dissonance I have, the more I can operate and function in the world. Because I think that feeling of living a lie, like something's wrong and you don't know why, causes a lot more depression and health problems in people than if you actually can try and view the world the way it is.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no. And of course, it's always about seeking out truth. And when we get back on the other side, we are going to hear all the arguments against the moon landing. I'm going to try to make some rebuttals. We're going to see some incontrovertible video on both sides. It's going to be confusing, but it'll be fun. Stay with us. Owen Benjamin, moon landing debate here on InfoWars. David Knight Show. Stay with us, folks.
And I buy what I like, you know, just like you guys. You got a ticket, and then my wife, like, emailed you the location, almost like it was a speakeasy where I'm selling crack. And then you guys show up to this, like, community center, and they have this beautiful theater, like, in a bizarre play. Like, right outside, there's people just but, you know, like, I was just in, that's another reason why the powerful people in the world don't like comedians, is because we get to travel. And I was just in Denver, and they have a giant Satan horse in their airport. And it's, in real life, it's terrifying. It's huge and has demon eyes and spikes and it just looks apocalyptic, right? And so I was telling my friend that, I'm like, man, this horse is freaking me out. I think it's some like real Satanist. She's like, that's art. I guess you don't understand art. I'm like, well, you have an Instagram account, you think you're a photographer, and I can play Bach by ear, so I don't know, maybe I do. And she was like, well, why don't you ask the artist what he meant by it, because I'm sure you're wrong. I'm like, little known fact, the horse killed his creator. That's true. The sculptor of, they call him Lucifer, it's this big giant Satan horse. As he was finishing the horse, this is Wikipedia, the horse fell on him and killed him. So the city of Denver cleaned off the blood and charged the taxpayers millions to prop it up in front of the Denver airport. And I was forced to perform in a children's museum. Because, you know, it's not the Satan horse, it's this guy.
That is my guest, Owen Benjamin. Very funny guy. You can find his work on YouTube, Owen Benjamin Comedy, or at hugepianist.com. He's on to debate the moon landing today. And oh, what a coincidence. China probe lands on the dark side of the moon in space exploration breakthrough. That happened today in a sheer coincidence. But we're gonna break down some of the accusations of falsehoods, and I'm going to try to rebut them as best I can. Let's take them one at a time. Owen, what do you got for me?
Okay, well, first I want, just from what we were talking about before,
Sure.
and when you were talking about how like which red pill can make you go over the edge, I think the moon landing compared to the trans kid stuff is 1,000th of the like effect it had on me as far as thinking the world's insane. Like when I found out that people were giving children hormone blockers, to me, that made me feel like I was living in a world of madness. Whereas the moon landing is it's an interesting look into the deception of the government. And the reason it matters is because of how much money NASA gets and how much say their word has. Like they're responsible for a lot of this, like the earth is becoming a fireball nonsense. But anyway, all right. So let's start from the top. I think the biggest thing that kicked it off for me again was the fact that it's an anomaly in two arenas, that it's someone explored something and then no other country followed. That's never happened in human history. And the other one would be that technology appears to have gone backwards, where I think his name is Pettit or something. Like one of the main astronauts there who's been there the longest said that he could go back to the moon in a nanosecond, but they destroyed the technology and it's too painful of a process to rebuild the technology. And I mean, medical technology, cars, cell phones, TVs, toasters, microwaves, like there is no other technology where it's like, man, I really wish we had that good stuff, you know, that we had in '69.
I'd say there were, because my argument against that would be like, I mean, I think it's the way he phrases it, because we stopped focusing on that. We shifted to a shuttle-based mission profile and going up to the International Space Station. And so to me, it would be like saying, in World War I, Germany had these massive cannons that could launch, just normal shells hundreds of miles. And if you ask now, like, okay, do we have that technology? I'd say, well, it'd be kind of a pain in the butt. Like, no, we don't. Now we have rockets and we have, some electro stuff, but we don't have that technology anymore. And if we wanted to launch a shell 100 miles, yeah, it'd be kind of a pain in the butt and we'd have to start all over from the beginning. So that's how I see the technological progression, is just we haven't focused on that. So we got to start from the ground up.
Well, here's why you're wrong. No, that's good. But every president since Reagan has promised that they were gearing up to go back to the moon, and then they would promptly cancel it. And also we're gearing up to go to Mars, which would be similar technology. Like I get totally what you're saying. I was joking about the here's why you're wrong thing, but like,
no, I got you.
I totally know what you mean about the space station, but the goal has been for a long time the moon. And people forget that George W. Bush, and Obama all said, like, we will go to the moon in the next 8 years or 10 years. And then they would, NASA would get $58 million a day. And they would be like, you know what, screw that. And then also the fact that right now, this is what brought me into the Van Allen belt stuff, is they've been developing technology now to get to Mars, and they're having issues with the harmful radiation in space. And, and you have videos of Barack Obama being like, we will get past low Earth orbit. It's a plan. We're hatching it. We're figuring it out. And you're like, see, that's where that falls apart to me. And then, of course, you have the and they hit it on the head the first time in 1969, and they had just invented the digital watch. So it's like, okay, and then they destroyed all the telemetry data, which is 1 metric ton of videotapes, and they didn't tell anybody. And then they said, so that's like finding a new continent and then just burning the maps because you said it was cold. It's like they said that they had a budget problem, and so they had to reuse old tapes. And it's like, of the moon landing, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, how many? And they're like, all of them. And it's like, okay, so
well, I'm not gonna vouch for a governmental agency doing stupid things. I'll give you that, and I'll also say I don't think it's ridiculous to think that there was at least an effort to try to film something that would be foolproof, because obviously this was, I mean, the moon landing was, for all intents and purposes, a publicity stunt,
right.
And so if you don't have, I mean, if it was just like newspaper headlines, it's like, trust us, we were there, it was great. It's not nearly the impact. You're spending these billions of dollars, you got to get the image. So I think it's totally possible. I think it probably happened that they probably did go to Stanley Kubrick and were like, hey, will you help us film this? I don't know if that actually happened, but the stuff I've seen, it's not just the video of the moon landing. In fact, we have a clip that I'd like to play. It's clip 15. They just recently, NASA just released tens of thousands of photos from the moon landing, and people go through, and y'all can just play it as B-roll. We don't need the audio. People go through and make montages of it. And I mean, you can see the whole trip from beginning to end in these montages that are not the tapes. I mean, these are just photos that sort of document the whole thing. I mean, it would be real hard to fake all of this. I mean, they didn't have Photoshop.
Have you seen like Avengers? You can Photoshop anything. It's like that's the whole thing is they worked with Walt Disney on it. And I'm glad you said that about that you believe that they could have shot stuff with Kubrick, because just even acknowledging any of the deception I see as a big win when you're talking to somebody, because so many people won't even acknowledge that. And this is the same thing that I run in with NASA as I do with Trump derangement syndrome, is they say he's this like genius mastermind and like a fool simultaneously. It's like, So did NASA pull off the greatest thing in human existence, or are they like dumb people? And that's why you can't have it both ways. And like the lunar landing, like when you look at those, when you look closely at like what the thing's made out of, it looks like a science experiment from a kid that's been given Adderall. It's like you can visibly see tape and stuff, but like I don't think the fact that these photos exist mean anything, because like in the photos you have stuff like the shadows don't line up, and these are arguments I try not to use because there's so many rebuttals where in that environment with the sun, the shadows would always be parallel. And they say that no, and they've recreated it to show that you can have non-parallel shadows, but they always use artificial light. See, the whole problem with the moon is when you point out a visual situation, the argument is always something that can't be tested, where you say, well, the surface of the moon is so reflective that's why you can see the astronaut in this time or whatever. So that's why I stick to the fact it's an anomaly
stuff,
of an anomaly. Yeah, the technology.
Well, hold on, we're about to end this. Can you hang on for the next 5 minutes, first hour?
Bro, I could do this all day.
All right, all right. The debate continues on the other side. I'm going to show you another science experiment that, I mean, it'll solve all the questions. It'll prove me right once and for all. It'll prove Owen Benjamin is an ranting insane. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Everyone has a right to think whatever they want to think. I'm not 100% either way, but we'll discuss it more on the other side. This is the David Knight Show. Harrison Smith sitting in. Owen Benjamin, my guest. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. Harrison Smith sitting in for David Knight. This is the third hour of the David Knight Show. I have Owen Benjamin as my guest. We're talking the moon landing, which is good, coincidental, because China has just landed a probe on the dark side of the moon and returned images back from that mysterious location. Of course, the last China probe that landed on the moon literally just broke as soon as it got there and didn't go anywhere. We'll see how successful this one is. This is an interesting story that I don't think a lot of people know, but I think, Owen, you'll appreciate if you think it's real. I think it's real, but pretty unknown. And this is that apparently the first thing that Buzz Aldrin did on the moon before he even got out of the capsule was that he took Holy Communion and actually did that entire ceremony of the Christian rite of communion, which I think is just fantastic. And of course, NASA kind of covered this up and wanted it to be more of a global event and didn't want to exclude anybody. So they didn't tell anybody that he did this, but he did in fact have it consecrated before he left, and then performed it himself on the moon, which I think is fascinating and awesome. That the first thing that ever happened on the moon was a Christian ceremony. Not a lot of people know that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that would be a beautiful thing, but the problem with liars is you never know with what they're saying is true or not true. Like, I would love that if that were true, but we can get into some nitty gritty about the details implying that never possibly happened.
Well, I do like. I mean, the Van Allen belt is interesting, and it's funny because as a natural skeptic and as a natural person who is inclined to believe that I'm being lied to all the time about everything, it is kind of hard to support these rebuttals where it's like, okay, the Van Allen belt, and I go, okay, well, NASA says that they only traveled through the Van Allen belt for about 58 minutes, and there was only, I think, 11.4.
Right. See, that's where you drown, though. That's where okay, it's the anomaly of the anomaly. Right now, we have a dog. It's the only dog in history that can speak English and fly, and there's no proof of it because the person deleted the proof. All of exploration, whether or not it's Antarctica or the top of a mountain where people keep dying, or America or Africa or around the tip of, there's never been a time when Spain or Portugal or a country goes and no one follows them.
But there's stuff in all those places. There's like
the top of the Himalayas. You think there's stuff?
Well,
dude, that's
no.
all just like to climb. Yeah. And the moon has plenty of stuff. It would be the most valuable place to study science. You have no atmosphere, 1/6 the gravity. You have the hearts and minds of all the boys in the world, like Harrison.
That's true.
Everybody
That's
wants
true.
to go to the moon. I would love to go to the moon. Everyone would. It's an app. One of the biggest lies of this whole thing is when people look at me in the eye and they're like, it's just an old dusty rock. What's the point of going there? It's too expensive to mine. It's like, what's the point? What? It's like, think about how much money
it could be $1 billion industry. $1 billion industry, bar none. Maybe that's why people get so mad. You're crushing their dreams of one day going to the moon. Maybe that's why people get so mad.
No, I'm crushing the crushers of dreams. Once we can acknowledge that that NASA is just lying, we can actually possibly go to the moon. It's like, here's the thing. It's like people that say it would have been cheaper to just fake it. Why'd they go through all this motion? They don't understand how governments work. That rover, each rover was $60 million, and our children have to pay that debt most likely with their blood in war. Like that's like this whole concept of like cheap and expensive and money saving. They don't understand how taxes work. The way the government works is they have bombs and guns and tanks, and they take as much money and they print as much money as they want, and then all their friends get rich. So when people say, like, when they talk about NASA as expenses, it's like they're sucking us dry. And each rover that they're just cruising around with $60 million in 1969.
Well, and we know with the Manhattan Project, and we know large scale secret programs can take place. We're about to go to break, but I can't stop. We're holding you on for one more segment. One more segment. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. One more segment. All right, we can't stop. We can't stop arguing about the moon landing. Is it a hoax? Did it really happen? We'll settle it here in this segment. I want to present my final piece of evidence here. It's a video of an astronaut dropping a hammer and a feather on the moon at the same time, and they drop at the same speed, something that would be impossible to have happen if you were not existing in a vacuum. Let's go to that video now.
Appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. and I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? Proves that Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings.
All right, so it's a little grainy. It's a little grainy. It's possible it was faked, but that's my final piece of evidence that they drop a feather and a hammer and they fall at the same rate. You cannot have that happen if there's air resistance.
Dude,
I want to hold on. I want to hear your rebuttal for that.
Funny.
Hold on, I want to hear your rebuttal for that, but then I also want to hear. I want you to extrapolate this and really, because whether the moon landing real, but what does this mean, and what is the symbolism of the moon landing, and why is it so important that we understand that our government will lie to us on a large scale, whether about this or about war or about any other thing?
That's a good point to bring up as well. But like, I can't wait to show you the movie The Shining. Like, you'd be like,
oh my God, I know all about it. Room 237. Room 237.
No. But just the fact that you're so pumped about the feather thing, it's like, look, here's a hallway of blood, and it's like, how did they make the hallway of blood? The fact, okay,
it's an inflatable hammer.
They used the Hasselblad film camera, right? That wouldn't get through TSA. Like, that doesn't have any capability of handling the temperature range on the moon, which I believe is 300 degrees in the plus and negative 250. And I know there's different, but like the solar wind and the radiation and stuff like that, nothing would work there. You can't broadcast. Oh, dude, look at this. How is this possible? I mean, I've stayed in hotels before. This is the nature of entertainment. And it's like, okay, I got one for you. How come the highest they ever jumped was 18 inches? Riddle me that, bud. It's 1/6 of gravity.
How heavy are the suits? Aren't the suits like 200 pounds or something crazy?
See, this is the thing that I find fascinating, is people don't realize that it's 1/6 the suit. So let's say you're 180 pounds, and I'm just winging the math, and you're 180 pounds, so 1/6 of 180 is what? 30. So a 180 pound man is 30 pounds. A 180 pound suit is 30 pounds. So now you have a 180 pound man who's 60 total pounds, and yet of all the Apollo missions, the highest vertical you can witness is 18 inches. It should be like 4 feet, like easily. Like those Apollo astronauts are in peak physical condition. And if you're in 1/6 gravity, one of the first things you're going to do is jump. And it, like, when you fast forward how they're doing the moon waddle, it looks just like
jogging.
Yeah. And we're talking 1/6 the gravity. Like, you weigh what you weighed in third grade, where you have the muscles of a grown man. Like that. That's just nonsense. So the feather hammer thing is. There's a million ways you can do that. I mean, I'll tell you right now, on a soundstage, like, theoretically, you could set up that feather could be made of steel, and it just looks like a feather. Like, I was an actor in Hollywood for years. It's like I was in the movie The House Bunny, when you see the cat stuck to my skin, that was fake skin. They put on a fake chest on me. So when Anna Faris's cat is stuck to my bare chest, and I'm pulling, and you see the skin.
I know. They can fake a lot of stuff. I mean, there is footage.
The Terminator isn't really Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, there is footage where you see guys on the moon fall over, and you see them kind of struggle to get up, and they have to like bounce themselves, and they sort of bounce a little bit and come back down. I mean, there's a lot of footage, and like 24 people have been to the moon. So we have been to the moon, I think, 12 times. No other country has, but it wasn't just Apollo 11, right? We supposedly, and I believe that we went back multiple times. I mean, there wouldn't really be a reason to go back 12 times if we just wanted to go back once and say, look, we did it.
Of course there is. Of course there is. It's money. Every time, like, they get to drain you dry with this stuff. That's why this stuff matters. And to bring it to your other point, where it's like, what does it do? What it does is, bear in mind, the astronauts, all the astronauts you're talking about, it was a mistake to go that many times, because one thing you'll find is they can't agree on whether or not they saw stars. That's the problem with lying. You can never guess what people will ask. And I know you probably like.
Yeah. I have a rebuttal to that, but go on. I want you to wrap it up. Yeah. We could go back and forth on details all day.
But I do want to hear your rebuttal.
I saw a video that I think you were playing where one guy was like, no, I couldn't see stars, and the other guy said yes, and I don't know, it just seemed like they were kind of confused on like what time period they were talking about. And I mean, it seems to me like it would make sense that if you have the moon reflecting light up, that it would obscure the stars. I don't know, that makes sense to me. Even without an atmosphere, the light pollution will still affect you and will drown out lesser light. So I just don't see them not seeing stars as proof.
Well, yeah, but see, that's the problem is you have other astronauts that say from the surface of the moon, you see every star, you can see nebula, you can see galaxies. It's like nothing you've ever seen. And then you have Neil Armstrong being like, it's the blackest night. There's the darkness is overwhelming. So what NASA gives us is infinite possibilities and infinite emptiness, where it's like, okay, you look up, you don't see God. What you see is vast emptinesses that you can never travel, but at the same time, it's more grains of sand than all the beaches in the world. So it's like, okay, anything's possible and nothing is possible. And it keeps you in the state of constant submission is what I find, where it's like people are in a state of like, okay, I want to believe something amazing is up there, but in reality, we can't even get past low Earth orbit, and we can't even get to the moon, really. And it's just this horrible lie that has deranged the way people view the entire world.
Mm. Oh, that's very interesting. Just in the last like 2 minutes here, though, you know, I've heard you talk about it on your channel and on your YouTube videos and stuff. But I do think that there is value in this conversation, at least, and in the acknowledgement that like it is possible that the government will lie to us at this scale. Whether they did about the moon landing or not, we can go back and forth on. But they have lied about. Okay, all right. Well, we'll let our viewers decide. They're probably with you, honestly. They probably agree with you. Well, so I'll give up on. I'll take the loss on that. But they have. I mean, they lie. They hold secrets. They, you know, why wouldn't they do this? Of course they would. So, so can you just sort of extrapolate on that and let people know why this debate is even worth having?
Of course, this debate is worth having because once you get to the point where you don't feel comfortable questioning the government or you assume that they have your best intentions, they will be able to trick you and start wars and steal from you and steal from your children and end up killing everybody. And that's what they do over and over again. Talk about a secret. The Soviet Gulag, Solzhenitsyn, had to it took him decades to get that information to the rest of the world. And we're talking about millions of people. You know, he made Hitler look like a AAA squad, you know?
Right.
And and for decades they would imprison their own population, killing them. And the fact that people weren't allowed to ask questions, that was seen as some sort of blasphemy, to turn the state into a religion is the worst possible thing you can do. And I'm seeing that with NASA. That's one reason why I'm so passionate about this. It's like people view NASA and the state, which is the same thing. NASA is funded by the state, as a religion. And they say, well, don't question the astronauts. They're seen as priests. And the moon rocks have brass, like traces of brass and uranium isotopes that only exist on Earth. And when confronted with that, people are like, well, it must be, dude, Neil Armstrong gave Holland a moon rock that turned out to be petrified wood. And they're like, yeah, but I mean, there was a mix up. I mean, I'm watching this and I'm like, have faith in God. Don't have faith in your state. If you have faith in your state, they will spend your children's future, start a war, and kill you.
Well, you know what? I completely agree with you. We'll disagree on the moon landing, but I totally respect your opinion. I think, you know, there are a lot of questions about it. There's definitely stuff we don't know, and you can't take the government for their word on anything. That's Owen Benjamin. Owen Benjamin on YouTube, Owen Benjamin Comedy, and HugePianist.com. He's on tour. He's got live sets. Go support this man in his quest to find the truth. Thanks so much for coming on, Owen.
Thank you, brother. It was a blast. We didn't go to the moon.